This is the Inspiron 2-in-1 from Dell. Now, this is an interesting laptop to hit the studio because A, it's a 2-in-1, and if you've been following our laptop content, 2-in-1s don't really vibe with me. But I understand that there's a market for these type of devices. But what really piqued my interest was its price and the specs that come in this thin and light package. It comes with AMD's Ryzen 5000U series processor, and it costs less than $1,000. Now that's a very attractive price point for a lot of people, and you might be asking yourselves, is it any good? How long does the battery last? Does the performance keep up with Intel's Tiger Lake offerings? What is it like to use every day? Well, there is good news and bad news, so let's dive into it after we pay some bills.
You don't deserve a crappy keyboard. An average person spends about 3 hours a day typing on one. A good keyboard doesn't have to be an investment either, but when you find the perfect one, it becomes a part of you forever. That is why I've been enjoying the Xtrfy K4 TKL over the last 2 years, a gaming keyboard with fantastic stabilizers, pleasant sound dampening, so you can coexist together just fine. Lovely. The Xtrfy K4 TKL, a winning keyboard for now and the future. Check it out below.
Okay, so before I get into the specs and pricing of this laptop, I do want to mention that Dell is offering the Inspiron 14 2-in-1 with Intel's Tiger Lake CPUs. And surprisingly, the base i5 model costs less than $700. And when you spec it out with an i7, it's about the same price as the Ryzen alternative. I'll leave a link down below if you're interested. So the AMD models start at $780, and for that, you get a Ryzen 5 5500U CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads, 8 GB of RAM, 256 GB of storage, and a 14-inch 1080p display. The model that we have over here comes with the Ryzen 7 5700U CPU with 4 extra threads, twice the storage and memory, and that'll run you a tad below $1,000. Now, this is very important. Even though these models rock the Ryzen 5000U series, they're still based off the Zen 2 architecture, because if you recall, back when AMD announced these back at CES, it was a mix of Zen 2 and Zen 3. So if you're really picky about Zen 3, your best option is to either go with a 5600U or a 5800U. As a matter of fact, we actually reviewed the ZenBook 13 OLED from ASUS featuring that processor. You can check out that review right away. Unfortunately, that laptop is still unavailable to buy. I mean, I don't know when AMD is going to fix it. The good news is that you can actually buy the Inspiron 14 2-in-1 right now with a Zen 2 CPU. Now, my theory is that AMD is trying to clear out their inventory with these chips to fill the demand for Zen 3. It's basically allowing manufacturers to release 5000 series laptops without actually launching a new architecture. Anyways, let's get into the exterior design of the Inspiron, and right away, you can tell that Dell is taking a page out of their flagship XPS and Latitude series. The chassis is mostly made out of aluminum and plastic materials, and the front lid comes in this beautiful mist blue finish that feels very close to what you get with higher-end devices. It also does a great job resisting fingerprints, and the hinge is smooth no matter what angle you position the lid. There's barely any wobble, and the base lifts itself up when you open the lid, giving the keyboard an angle when you're typing on it. It kind of reminds me of the ZenBook series from ASUS. Now, given that this is a 2-in-1 device, you can flip this to a tablet mode like that, or a tent mode if you want to get closer to the content that you're viewing. You can also pair this up with a stylus if you're a student looking to take notes in class. And Dell offers the Active Stylus Pen, or the Active Pen, that costs about an extra $45. So I guess, that's a good accessory to pair with this laptop. As for size, it's bigger than my XPS 13 since this features a 14-inch display, but they've actually managed to keep it pretty thin, coming in at 0.71 inches or 17.95 millimeters. And if I were to compare this to the XPS 13 or even the ZenBook 13 OLED from ASUS, the Inspiron 14 is the thickest of the bunch, and it weighs the heaviest too, at 3.43 pounds. And coming from the XPS 13, I was instantly able to tell the difference. The power adapter is pretty compact. It's a 65-watt charger, and it tops up the laptop via USB Type-C. Moving on to the interior space, and you'll notice that the keyboard layout is very similar to the XPS 13, except for the size of the keycaps. They're slightly smaller, and the spacing is adequate. The keys are good, but it just lacks feedback when you're bottoming out. It just has a mushy feeling to it, and the travel distance is pretty shallow. I would classify these as average since that is what you're paying for. And you also get the standard white LED backlit system, which gets a job done in low light situations. I also want to mention that the power button also functions as a fingerprint reader, which is a really nice added security option for this laptop, and it works pretty well. The trackpad is fine. Now, you might be asking yourselves, what does fine really mean? Well, it works, but it's just really hard to get used to comfortably. You see, the surface is made out of plastic, which is pretty smooth, but it doesn't feel as responsive to your touch input, because I've certainly noticed a little bit of delay when dragging icons and resizing windows. I would actually highly recommend you get a dedicated mouse if you're planning on getting any work done precisely. And I should also mention that the primary left-right buttons are a joke. I mean, it just lacks feedback, and it also feels sticky. Sometimes when I hit the primary left button, it just sticks. I mean, I can't physically drag the icon because it's just stuck there. So yeah, this trackpad is just, it's a no-go. And quite frankly, for this price point, I think the trackpads that kind of blew my mind were the Acer Swift 3 and the ZenBook 13 OLED. Those were really good for the price. As for ports, you get full-size HDMI, USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A, and Type-C port with power delivery and DisplayPort pass-through. Keep in mind that this is the port that you'll be using to charge up the laptop. Switching over to the right-hand side, you get a headphone jack, another USB 3.1 Gen 1 port, and a micro SD card reader. Now, I did run into an issue with the Type A ports. For some reason, if I have an external drive plugged into the left USB port, the system just gets really unresponsive to a point where it takes minutes to load up a Blender file, which usually takes less than seconds to load up. Also, it just takes a while to restart. Sometimes when I'm trying to drag icons here and there, it feels really, really unresponsive. If I use the other port located on the right-hand side, it's perfectly okay. Now, the drive that I plugged in has a capacity of 2 terabytes, and I tried to recreate this issue with a 512 and a 1 terabyte external drive, and it was fine. It's highly doubtful that you'll experience something like this since I was only able to replicate it with a single drive that works perfectly fine on other systems. But if you experience these slowdowns, at least you might know what's causing it. So this is what the webcam quality looks like on the Inspiron 14 2-in-1. Now, the quality is obviously not the greatest, but I actually really like the colors coming out of the sensor, and the microphone sounds average. It does pick up a lot of background noise, so I wouldn't particularly use this for business meetings or things like that. You're much better off using an external microphone. Also, a cool addition to the Inspiron 14 2-in-1 is the fact that it comes with a physical privacy shutter. So right now, I just use that, so you can't really see me, but boom, if I just unblock that, it's an added layer of security for those who value privacy. The speakers are located at the bottom, and they sound pretty terrible. I mean, the trebles are harsh, the bass gets super distorted. It is exactly what you'd expect for laptop speakers within this price range, so keep your expectations low. Switching gears to the display, and what we have over here is a 14-inch 1080p WVA panel, which stands for wide viewing angles. Now, that's a term that Dell throws around with their lower-end devices. The bottom line is, it's a poor display. As you can see, it only covers 62% sRGB, 46% Adobe RGB, and DCI-P3. The contrast ratios are way off, the colors are muted. It's just not the display that's meant to be used to watch movies or videos. I think for productivity tasks like working on Word documents or data sheets, it's fine. The touchscreen works okay too, but if you're a digital artist, going to school, where you value a really good quality display, this ain't it. You should definitely stay away from this. All right, so I'm in the middle of filming this laptop, and I was just trying to shoot the display, and it turns out that when I flipped it into tent mode, the whole system just froze. So for some reason, it won't play back the video. I can't do anything. It's completely frozen. If I switch it back to laptop mode, nothing happens. Update. I think the system did crash. So now it's actually rebooting, which should bring things back to normal, but that is really odd. The brightness levels are also really low. It only goes as far as 240 nits, which is not something that I would recommend for anybody looking to get a laptop in 2021. Upgradability is surprisingly flexible on this laptop because you have instant access to 2 SOTA memory slots. Dell doesn't have a number as to what the maximum capacity it can support, but I think it's pretty cool to see on a thin and light laptop. The primary NVMe SSD is right over here, and the drive speeds are respectable. The read performance is great, yielding over 2.5 gigabytes per second, but writes take a bit of a hit. Now, compared to the ZenBook 13 OLED, it is far behind since that featured a really fast SSD, which was really surprising considering the price. Now, before I get into temperatures, clock speeds, and power discussion, let me explain why this section's a lot shorter than usual, because Dell only has a single power plan on this laptop, and in their software and in the Windows power plans. Balanced is the only way to go. So if you're wondering about maximizing that taskbar slider, it just doesn't do anything either. And I'm actually pretty disappointed in that since, like I said in my tips and tricks video, which you can check out right over here, having separate power plans is a great way to get the most out of your laptop. So with that in mind, let's talk about how this behaves in balanced mode. Now remember, the 5700U is based off the Zen 2 architecture, and Dell has set a pretty interesting power profile. For the first 2 minutes, it sucks back about 27 watts, and then there's a very gradual scale back to a constant 15 to 16 watts. That directly translates into frequencies of 3.6 gigahertz during that 2-minute time span, and means most of the tasks you'll likely be doing will be in the higher power envelope. But the interesting thing here is that even though we're seeing almost a 50% scale back in power, clock speeds only fall by about 20%, so even at 15 watts, this chip is still delivering respectable performance. The temperatures follow the expected curve too. They rise to just over 90 degrees and then fall back to about 63 degrees as the power limit gets reduced. So all in all, the Inspiron 14 is a pretty well-behaved laptop in its single power mode. On top of that, the noise levels are not that bad under full load. It peaked to about 40 decibels, which is very respectable for a machine that packages a fast and power-efficient CPU. As far as surface temperatures go, well, this thing's really well behaved, and you don't have to worry about popping it onto your lap now and then. The only thing to watch out for is the watts section that gets a little warmer to the touch, but it doesn't get to worrying levels. Moving on to battery life, and since there's really one single power setting on this thing, these results are it when it comes to the Inspiron 14. And I've got to say, for light loads, the 2-in-1 has some absolutely insane numbers here, especially when you consider it's only got a 54 watt-hour battery. But then again, all the Zen CPUs seem to do really good with idle scenarios. The issue here is this one's based off Zen 2 instead of the 5800U's Zen 3, so even though it runs at just 15 watts, the overall efficiency under load is quite a bit less. That means battery life will end up in the middle of the pack in this test. Moving on to real-world performance, even though we moved away from using Cinebench as a performance test, I wanted to bring it back here to show you something that'll affect anyone buying an Inspiron 14 2-in-1 right now. The only devices available use the 5500U or the 5700U, like my sample has. And like I mentioned before, both of these are based off the older Zen 2 architecture, whereas the 5600U and 5800U use Zen 3. That means really good multi-performance. However, Zen 2 has none of the optimizations that make newer CPUs so good in lightly threaded workloads. That means it falls way behind the competition here. I mean, it even loses to the ZenBook Flip S that rocks a 1165 G7 running at just 13 watts. This might not sound like a big deal, but you have to remember, these slim and light laptops will usually be used for lighter workloads. Now, in heavier workloads, this thing absolutely demolishes everything Intel has. I mean, it isn't even close, with the Inspiron shaving more than 40% off the time it takes some other tasks to complete. But then when we start talking about more typical scenarios like photo editing, word processing, PowerPoint exports, and some other programs, the 5700U struggles to keep up. I mean, sure, losing by a few seconds here and there might not sound like much, but on the whole, it does make the system feel just a bit more sluggish than some of the others on these charts, especially if the documents you're working are larger than the ones that we're using for these tests. Luckily though, the Inspiron's price is also one of the lower ones here as well. Premiere rendering is a bit of a challenge here too, since it uses a combination of a bit less heavily threaded CPU loads and GPU acceleration. And since the Vega 8 graphics here hasn't really been updated in, well, forever, it gets pushed back too. And that directly translates into some pretty inconsistent gaming results with the Inspiron 14, because it's usually sitting closer to the bottom of the charts. But then again, there are some other games that tend to favor the Vega architecture, especially with AMD's much better driver rollouts. So there's definitely some situations where anything with a Zen-based processor will walk all over the devices with Intel CPUs. I mean, in some cases, games just refuse to run on anything Intel-based. And that's a big concern since they're in the process of developing their own discrete graphics card. So for less than $1,000, the Inspiron 14 2-in-1 offers really good performance compared to the competition. I mean, it gives Intel's Tiger Lake CPUs a run for its money, specifically in multi-core performance. Single core or lightly threaded performance is where you'll need to watch out for. I should also mention that the battery life is spectacular on this laptop. I just wasn't expecting it from a machine that costs just so less. And I also like the overall design as well, especially with this mist blue finish at the top. The only drawback is the display and the trackpad, which to me are two of the most important factors of a laptop. I mean, the ZenBook 13 OLED, which I know I'm bringing up every now and then in this video, is just the benchmark as to what you can achieve for a similar price point. The display was great, the trackpad was awesome, and the battery life was better too. The only problem is that you can't find one right now, so you're only left with something like this. You see, if you don't care about those two things, and if you're on a budget, then you should consider this laptop or tablet. Oh wait, that's why it's called a 2-in-1. Well, anyways, on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you were able to take away everything that you needed to know about the Inspiron 14 2-in-1 from Dell. Let us know what you guys think about this, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Spend responsibly, my friends.